The old pocket watch wasn't worth much. Its scratched silver case, its cracked crystal, and its faded engraving made it look like something most antique dealers would toss into a bargain bin. Nathan Mercer almost did exactly that. He was a widowed single father who ran a small clock repair shop on the Maine coast, a shop that had once belonged to his grandfather and now barely kept the lights on. The gold lettering on the front window had faded so badly that only half the name remained visible from the street. Mercer Clock and Watch Rep. Inside, shelves leaned under the weight of broken mantel clocks, carriage clocks, music boxes, and watches whose owners had promised to return but never had. Nathan repaired almost anything that measured time. The problem was that fewer people cared about repairing old things anymore. That morning, a final disconnection notice sat beneath a chipped blue mug on the kitchen table. Nathan had placed the mug there carefully so his 9-year-old daughter, Ellie, wouldn't see the red letters across the envelope. Final disconnection warning. Ellie, however, noticed everything. She sat at the kitchen table drawing the abandoned lighthouse they had visited the day before, every broken window, every crooked railing, even the gull perched on the rusted weather vane. Nathan stood at the stove making scrambled eggs. "You forgot the fog," he said. Ellie looked up seriously. "You can't draw fog. You draw clouds all the time. Fog is sneakier." Nathan smiled despite himself and placed a plate in front of her. She looked at the eggs, then at him. "Are these the last eggs?" No. It was a lie. She knew it. She picked up her fork anyway and said nothing more about it, because at 9 years old, Ellie had already learned when her father needed protecting from his own worry. The pocket watch had been found the previous afternoon inside a forgotten wooden toolbox beneath a collapsed workbench at an abandoned lighthouse keeper's cottage along the Maine coast. Margaret Ellis, the 71-year-old antique store owner 2 doors down, had hired Nathan to help catalog the property before the county sold it. Most of what they found was worthless. Rust-covered tools, mildewed books, broken lanterns. Then Ellie crouched beside a collapsed workbench and called out, "Dad, there's a box under here." Inside it, wrapped in oil-stained cloth, was the silver pocket watch. Nathan had spent half the night cleaning it. The watch was unusual, not because it was expensive, but because it had been altered. Someone had replaced the original inner plate with a hand-machined mechanism. The craftsmanship was precise enough to belong to a master watchmaker. Nathan found the first release easily. The second remained hidden. He did not force it. Old mechanisms punished impatience. On the back of the watch, once the corrosion was carefully cleaned away, 4 tiny words had been engraved by hand. "Return only to Evelyn." No last name. No address. Just Evelyn. Nathan stared at those words for a long time. Margaret arrived at the apartment door early the next morning, not with a greeting, but with a printed photograph extended in her hand. The image showed a charity gala in Boston. At the center stood a tall woman in a black evening gown, her expression controlled and distant. Beside her stood an older man in a formal suit. The caption read, "Evelyn Ashbourne and family attorney Victor Sloan attend the Ashbourne Maritime Foundation benefit." Nathan looked at Margaret. The billionaire widow? Margaret nodded. Everyone in Maine knew Evelyn Ashbourne's story. Her husband, Charles, one of the wealthiest shipping magnates on the East Coast, had vanished during a storm 3 years earlier. His yacht had disappeared. Wreckage was recovered 2 days later. His body never was. Margaret handed Nathan a second document, a copy of an old lighthouse maintenance ledger. He read the final entry. October 14th, private access authorized after midnight. C. Ashbourne. Nathan felt the room become very still. "That was 2 nights before his yacht disappeared," Margaret said quietly. Before either of them could speak further, a car door slammed in the alley below. Nathan crossed to the window. A black sedan sat across the street, engine running, windows tinted. It pulled away before he could see the plate. Nathan looked at the velvet box containing the watch. His late wife Emily had always said one sentence solved almost every difficult decision. "If it isn't yours, return it." He closed the box. "We'll go directly to the estate." Ellie climbed into the station wagon before Nathan could suggest she stay behind. "I found it," she said, fastening her seatbelt. And if the scary car comes back, I don't want to be here without you. Nathan had no answer for that. He started the engine. The old wagon coughed twice before turning over. Neither of them noticed the gray pickup parked at the far end of the street. The man behind the wheel lifted his phone. "They have the watch," he said. A voice answered immediately. "Do not let Mercer reach Evelyn Ashbourne." The pause. "What about the child?" The voice replied coldly. "Whatever is necessary." The drive south should have taken just under 4 hours. It started with the gray pickup. Ellie spotted it first, coloring calmly in her sketchbook. "Dad, that truck has been behind us since the bridge." Nathan glanced in the mirror. Old pickup. Mudsplash doors. No company logo. No front license plate. He exited onto a coastal road toward Rockport. The pickup exited too. He slowed behind a delivery van. The pickup slowed. He pulled into a gas station, and 30 seconds later, the gray truck rolled past without stopping. Maybe he had imagined it. Maybe not. After filling the tank, they stopped at a small bakery overlooking the harbor. Ellie happily carried 2 blueberry muffins to a picnic table outside. Nathan's phone vibrated. A known number. "Nathan Mercer?" "Yes." A calm male voice replied. "You found something that belongs to the Ashbourne family." Nathan's expression hardened. "Who is this?" "Someone trying to save you unnecessary trouble. We're prepared to offer $50,000 for the item you're carrying." "I think you have the wrong person." $100,000. Nathan ended the call. Ellie looked up. "Bad customer?" "Worse." "What happened?" "Someone wants to buy something that isn't for sale." Ellie frowned. "But we're giving it back." "Exactly." Nearly an hour later, the gray pickup returned. On a lonely stretch of highway running beside dense pine forest, with traffic completely gone, it pulled alongside the station wagon. The passenger window lowered halfway. A man calmly held up a plain white envelope stuffed with cash. The driver mouthed 4 silent words. "Last chance, Mr. Mercer." Nathan stared straight ahead. When the road cleared, he drove without acknowledging them. The pickup held beside him for 10 long seconds. Then it dropped back and disappeared. Ellie whispered, "They're angry. They expected money to change my mind." "It didn't." "No." She looked at him quietly. "Mom would have been proud." Nathan felt the familiar ache settle deep inside his chest, the particular weight of grief that never fully leaves, only rearranges itself around everything else. He kept driving toward the ocean. Rain began just before sunset. Ashbourne Manor stood on a private coastal peninsula, its gray stone walls rising above iron gates and centuries-old oaks. It looked less like a home and more like a fortress built to guard generations of secrets. 2 uniformed guards approached the station wagon before Nathan had fully stopped. He held up the velvet box. "I need to return something to Mrs. Evelyn Ashbourne." "Do you have an appointment?" "No. I'm sorry. Mrs. Ashbourne isn't receiving." Nathan reached into his jacket and produced the lighthouse maintenance ledger. Charles Ashbourne visited the lighthouse 2 nights before he disappeared. The watch was hidden there. "I think she needs to see it." The older guard's expression shifted. He spoke quietly into his radio. Several long minutes passed. The radio crackled. "Send him in." The iron gates slowly opened. Ellie whispered, "I guess they changed their minds." Nathan wasn't sure that was a good sign. Inside the mansion, Victor Sloan met them in the entrance hall, a distinguished man in his late 60s with silver hair and the quiet authority of someone who had spent a lifetime solving other people's most difficult problems. His eyes went immediately to the velvet box. He led them through long marble corridors lined with portraits of the Ashbourne family stretching back over a century. Ellie stopped before one painting. "Dad." The portrait showed Charles Ashbourne standing proudly beside an old lighthouse overlooking the ocean. The same lighthouse, Victor noticed. That was painted 6 months before Mr. Ashbourne disappeared. Nathan looked back at the watch in the velvet box and said nothing. 200 miles away, inside a corner office overlooking Boston Harbor, Damien Cross received a phone call. Mercer made it through the gate. Damien slowly rose from his desk and walked to the window. Below him, Cargo ships crossed the harbor, carrying millions in containers that moved according to schedules he controlled. "No more offers," he said quietly. "Stop him before he reaches Evelyn." After the call ended, he reached into the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside rested a silver pocket watch, almost identical to Nathan's. Almost. The engraving on its back was different. Instead of "Return only to Evelyn," it read, "Property of C." Damien looked at it for a long moment. "So," he whispered, "you finally found the other one." Victor opened the doors to a quiet sitting room overlooking the Atlantic. Evelyn Ashbourne stood near the windows with her back toward them, wearing a simple navy sweater rather than the formal suits she wore in newspapers. Without turning around, she spoke. "Mr. Mercer, thank you for coming." Nathan stepped forward and placed the velvet box on the table. For several seconds, Evelyn didn't move. Then she reached forward and opened it. The silver pocket watch caught the warm glow of the fireplace. Her breathing stopped. She traced the worn engraving with trembling fingertips. "I gave this to Charles on our first wedding anniversary," she whispered. She turned the watch over. Her thumb instinctively found a tiny notch hidden beside the winding crown. A notch she had never known existed. A soft click. The watch opened. Then a second click. A hidden compartment slid from inside the movement. A tightly folded piece of yellowed paper dropped into Evelyn's hands. Victor stepped closer. "I've never seen that compartment before." Neither had Nathan. Evelyn slowly unfolded the note. Her eyes moved across the first line. The color drained from her face. A tear rolled down her cheek, then another, and then the woman who reportedly hadn't cried since her husband's funeral 3 years ago collapsed into the nearest chair. Her voice was barely audible. "Charles, you knew someone inside our family would betray us." Before Nathan or Victor could speak, the lights went out. Every chandelier, every lamp, the entire estate swallowed by sudden darkness. A heartbeat later, the security alarms began screaming. Red emergency lighting flickered across the marble walls. Outside, security vehicles raced across the grounds. Radio voices shouted through the chaos. "Lock every gate. No one leaves the property." Ellie gripped Nathan's hand. The backup generator roared to life. Lights slowly returned. The sitting room door burst open and the security chief rushed in. "The estate has been breached." Victor's face hardened. "What happened?" The surveillance system went offline for exactly 34 seconds. Nathan understood immediately. Someone wanted those cameras off. And they knew exactly where to disable them. Evelyn carefully folded Charles's letter and slipped it inside her sweater. "No one outside this room can know what's in it." Victor agreed instantly. "Not even the board." Especially not the board. In Damien's office, his phone lit up. "We're too late." She read it. A long silence. "Did she see the names?" "I couldn't get close enough." Damien stared at Boston's skyline through rain-streaked glass. His voice became very calm, the kind of calm that made the person on the other end of the line go quiet. "Then phase 2 begins tonight." Victor locked the sitting room doors himself. Only 4 people remained inside. Nathan, Ellie, Evelyn, Victor. Evelyn unfolded the fragile letter once more. Charles's handwriting was neat despite the yellowed, fading ink. She swallowed and began reading aloud. "My dearest Evelyn, if you are reading this, then Nathan Mercer has finally found you." Nathan's head lifted instantly. His own name. Written 3 years before they had ever met. Ellie looked from her father to Evelyn in disbelief. Victor slowly removed his glasses. Nathan stepped forward. "May I see that?" There was no mistake. Charles Ashbourne had written, not simply Nathan, but his full name. Nathan Mercer. Nathan read further. "Nathan, if fate has placed this watch in your hands, then it means I was right to trust your father." The room went very still. My father. His father, Samuel Mercer, had died nearly 12 years earlier. A quiet watchmaker. A humble man who had never once spoken about billionaires or billionaires' secrets. Nathan set the letter down and looked at the watch. He examined the hidden mechanism with fresh eyes, every gear, every spring, every microscopic adjustment. and suddenly recognized something he had overlooked before. His father's signature. Not written, built. Samuel Mercer had always polished one particular screw slightly brighter than the others. A personal habit of over 40 years. Nathan had grown up watching his father do it without ever understanding why. He carefully lifted the movement beneath the lamplight. There was one tiny polished screw. His father had worked on this watch years ago, in secret, without a single word to his son. Nathan felt the room spin. Victor locked away Charles's letter and led them through the manor's rear entrance, into waiting vehicles. The coordinates engraved inside the watch's hidden compartment led north, less than 20 miles away, to a narrow coastal peninsula. To Blackstone Lighthouse. The second lighthouse. The one that had officially burned down 23 years ago. Rain pounded the windshield as Nathan steered toward it. Lightning split the night sky. No one spoke for a long time. Blackstone Lighthouse looked exactly as abandoned as advertised. The stone tower still stood, blackened by age and salt, but the keeper's cottage had long since collapsed. Weeds pushed through broken brick. The iron gate was rusted shut. "This place doesn't look like anyone's been here in years," Nathan said. "That's exactly why Charles chose it," Victor replied. Ellie walked carefully toward the old tower. "The coordinates stop here." Nathan removed the pocket watch and followed the final symbol inside the compartment, a small compass pointing north. He counted exactly 12 steps from the lighthouse entrance. The watch clicked. By itself. Everyone froze. The second compartment had opened again. This time, a tiny brass key slid into Nathan's palm. Victor searched the ground until he found a weathered iron hatch buried beneath years of vines and sand. The brass key fit perfectly. With a loud groan, the hatch swung open. Cold air drifted upward. Stone steps disappeared into darkness below. The underground chamber was not a bunker. It was a workshop. Old drafting tables. Engineering blueprints. Precision mechanical tools. Shelves filled with leather-bound journals. Every surface perfectly preserved inside the dry underground vault, sealed from the salt air and weather above for over 2 decades. Ellie walked to the largest workbench. "There are pictures." Nathan lifted one. It showed 2 men standing together outside an unfinished lighthouse, both smiling, both proud, beside a detailed harbor construction model. Charles Ashbourne and Samuel Mercer. Nathan set the photograph down slowly. Evelyn picked up the largest leather journal from the shelf. The cover read simply, "Charles Ashbourne, Private Record." She opened it, began reading, and the truth finally revealed itself. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, the way truth usually arrives when it has been hidden for a very long time. Years before his disappearance, Charles had discovered that Damian Cross and several other senior executives inside Ashbourne Global had secretly built a network of shell companies. Billions of dollars had been quietly diverted from company projects over many years. When Charles confronted them, they threatened his family. Unable to trust anyone inside the corporation, not even board members he had known for decades, he turned to the only man he was certain could never be bought. Samuel Mercer. Not because Samuel was wealthy or powerful. Because in 30 years of knowing him, Charles had never once seen Samuel Mercer compromise his honesty for any price. Together, they designed the modified pocket watch. It would protect every piece of evidence. Account records, wire transfers, shell company registrations, witness statements, sealed inside a mechanism that only patience and good faith could unlock. Charles had written one final sentence at the bottom of the last page. "If you are reading this, then honesty survived longer than greed." Nathan closed the journal. His eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, exactly, but from the particular grief of understanding someone you loved only after they were gone. His father hadn't been hiding from success. He hadn't been content with smallness. He had been protecting something worth more than money. And he had never said a single word about it. Footsteps echoed above them. Victor looked toward the staircase. Several armed men rushed down the stone steps. At their front, soaked by rain and visibly furious for the first time all evening, was Damian Cross. He stood at the base of the stairs and looked slowly around the workshop. Then he began to applaud, slowly, deliberately. Congratulations. You found what Charles spent years hiding. Nathan stepped in front of Ellie. Damien looked directly at Evelyn. Hand me the journal. No. You've already lost the company. The board voted an hour ago to remove you as acting chairwoman. Evelyn didn't flinch. Victor quietly said, I don't think you've read Charles's journal. Something shifted in Damien's expression, the first crack in his composure all night. Victor continued calmly. Every offshore account. Every illegal transfer. Every witness. Every payment. He documented all of it. Dates. Names. Amounts. All of it verified and cross-referenced. Damien's face went pale. Nathan noticed something on the far wall, an old satellite communication cabinet, still carrying emergency backup power. A faded handwritten label identified it. Emergency Distress Transmitter. Coast Guard Channel 16. Victor saw it at the same moment. Ellie was faster than either of them. She crossed the room in 4 steps and pressed the emergency distress switch before anyone could move to stop her. Damien lunged. Stop her. But the signal was already transmitting. Within seconds, the old transmitter activated. The signal reached the Coast Guard station and state police simultaneously, broadcasting their GPS coordinates directly from beneath the lighthouse. Damien stopped moving. Outside, police sirens rose over the sound of the rain. Then helicopter rotors. Powerful searchlights swept through the lighthouse windows and flooded down through the open hatch. Damien looked at the transmitter. Then at Ellie. Then at Nathan. He slowly lowered his head. I underestimated one thing, he said quietly. Nathan answered him. You underestimated ordinary people. 3 months later, Ashbourne Global announced the largest corporate fraud investigation in its history. Damien Cross and every executive connected to the shell company network were arrested. Billions in diverted funds were recovered and returned to the company's employees and pension accounts. People who had never known the money was missing. Evelyn declined an offer to return as permanent CEO. Instead, working with Victor and a team of independent advisors, she restructured Ashbourne Global into an employee-owned foundation, fulfilling a plan Charles had outlined in his private journals but never lived to implement. Victor Sloan retired after 40 years of service and took the fishing trip Charles had promised him every summer for a decade. Nathan returned to his repair shop. Nothing about it looked different from the outside. The faded sign still hung in the window. Old clocks still waited patiently on the shelves. The polishing wheel still rattled loudly enough that Ellie had renamed it the Loud Machine, a name Nathan had quietly started using himself. Only one thing had changed. Customers now traveled from across New England, not because Nathan had become famous, and not because his prices had changed, but because word had spread about the watchmaker who had been offered a fortune and driven 4 hours in an old station wagon to give something back for free. People trusted him. That turned out to be worth more than he had expected. One quiet afternoon several weeks later, a black sedan stopped outside the shop. Evelyn Ashbourne stepped inside carrying a small wooden box. Nathan looked up from his workbench. You didn't have to drive all this way. I wasn't returning something this time, she said. I was bringing something. She placed the box on his workbench and stepped back. Inside, carefully arranged on a cloth lining, rested a full set of watchmaker's tools, worn smooth by years of use, every handle shaped by the grip of the same pair of hands. Samuel Mercer's tools. Found inside the underground workshop. Restored. And brought home. Nathan lifted the old screwdriver his father had used every day of his working life. His fingers trembled slightly. Evelyn looked around the little shop, at the leaning shelves, the ticking clocks, the faded gold letters in the window. Charles wrote something about your father, she said quietly. In his journal. I wanted you to know what it said. Nathan looked up. She smiled through quiet tears. He said, some men build fortunes. Others build the kind of character that protects them. Ellie ran in from the back room a moment later, holding a fresh drawing. It showed the old lighthouse under a clear sky, with 4 figures standing outside it. Nathan, her grandfather Samuel, Charles Ashbourne, and Ellie herself, holding the silver pocket watch up toward the light. Above the drawing, in her careful 9-year-old handwriting, She had written 5 simple words. Honesty always finds its way. Nathan hung the drawing beside the shop door. Every morning after that, he saw it before opening for business. And every evening, as the old clocks chimed together across the quiet workshop, he thought about the greatest inheritance his father had ever given him. It had never been hidden inside a pocket watch. It had always been hidden inside the simple decision to do the right thing. Even when no one was watching, even when it cost something, even when the only reward was being able to live with yourself afterward. Samuel Mercer had understood that his whole life. Now, finally, so did his son.